They say the river never keeps secrets. But I know better. Because beneath its quiet surface, it hides everything I buried. The screams, the lies, and the man who thought I'd never fight back. Friends. My name is Carmer, and my mother's name was Eleanor. For as long as I can remember, we lived by the river, a slow, silver current that seemed peaceful on the surface, but had sharp stones and dark secrets beneath. Everyone in our little town said we were lucky, 2 women living alone, running a small riverside cafe that smelled of coffee and cinnamon bread. But luck is just a word people use when they don't see the truth. Because what they didn't know was that every night, we lived in fear. The fear had a name. Cole Mercer. He wasn't family, though he acted like he owned us. He was my mother's late husband's brother, a man who stayed too long after the funeral, here to help. Help turned into control. Control turned into bruises. When I was 16, I heard the first slap. My mother told me it was nothing. Cole just gets angry, as she said, her eyes cast down. He'll calm down tomorrow. Tomorrow became 10 years. I never forgot the sound of his boots coming up the wooden steps at night. The way the boards groaned under his weight. Each creak meant danger. I was small then, quiet, the girl behind the counter who smiled too much and spoke too little. But inside me, something was growing. A silent, sharp thing. And the night I found my mother sitting on the kitchen floor, her hands shaking, her lips bleeding, something inside me snapped. That was the last night I was Carmer, the girl who obeyed. The next morning, I became Carmer, the girl who planned. After that night, my mother never smiled again. She sat by the river every morning, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders, staring at the water as if it could wash her pain away. I wanted to tell her to run, to fight, but her spirit had already drifted somewhere far away. So I started keeping a notebook. Not one filled with dreams or poetry like other girls my age, but with plans. Quiet, patient plans. Cole had a weakness. Every Saturday, he went to town to drink with his old friends, bragging about how he had kept his house in line. He'd come home late, his shirt stained, his breath heavy with whiskey. That was when he was slow. That was when I learned his patterns. 10 years under one roof with a monster teaches you things. How to listen through walls, how to move without sound, how to hide anger behind a smile. When I turned 26, my mother grew ill. Her hands trembled, and she stopped eating. One afternoon, she looked at me with eyes as dull as river stones and said softly, "When I'm gone, promise me you'll leave this place." I wanted to promise. I really did. But I couldn't. Because something inside me whispered, "Not yet." The night she died, the river was louder than usual. I buried her behind the cafe, under the old willow tree she loved. Cole didn't even show up to the funeral. He was too busy playing cards. That's when I made my real plan, not to leave, but to stay. To finish what she couldn't. For the next 6 months, I played the role of the obedient niece. I cooked. I cleaned. I even laughed when Cole told his cruel jokes. But while he slept, I changed the locks. I built a small steel hatch under the floorboards behind the pantry, a trick I learned from fixing the storage cellar. Nobody knew it was there but me. Inside it, I kept a single item, my mother's old silver locket, and a small bottle I bought from pharmacy downtown, labeled for animal sedation. Each night, I whispered the same words before sleeping. "Tomorrow, Mom. Tomorrow, I'll set you free." It was late autumn when it finally happened. The air smelled of rain, and the river ran fast and wild, like it had been waiting, too. Cole came home later than usual. I could hear his truck struggling up the gravel path, the engine coughing like an old beast. I was sitting at the table, pretending to sew, though my hands were steady for the first time in years. He slammed the door open, muttering to himself. "Where's my dinner, Carmer? You get slower every damn day." I didn't answer. I just stood up quietly and brought him a bowl of stew I'd been keeping warm. He didn't notice the faint sweetness in it, the kind that didn't come from sugar. He just ate, scooping it greedily, spilling bits on the table. I stood behind him, watching the way his shoulders rose and fell. For once, I wasn't afraid. When he finished, I took his empty bowl and said softly, "Do you ever think about her?" He frowned. "Who?" "My mother." He laughed. A harsh, ugly sound. "She was weak. That's what happens when women don't learn to shut their mouths." The words hung in the air like poison. And then, slowly, his laughter began to fade. His hand trembled. The spoon clattered to the floor. He looked at me, confused. "What did you?" His voice broke. He stood, stumbled, and crashed into the table. The bowl shattered. "Just rest," I said quietly. "You'll wake up soon enough." He tried to grab me, but his body was heavy, clumsy. When he finally collapsed, I dragged him, inch by inch, across the wooden floor. The boards creaked under his weight. To the pantry. To the hatch. He wasn't dead. Just sleeping, breathing slow, like a bear in winter. I opened the hatch, the one he never knew existed, and lowered him inside. The air down there was cold and damp. Before I closed it, I leaned close to his ear. "You always said a woman's place was in the house," I whispered. "Well, now it's yours." I shut the hatch and locked it. The sound of the latch echoed like a bell. Outside, the rain began to fall harder. The river swelled, pressing against its banks, hungry and dark. I stood by the window all night, watching the water rise. By dawn, the storm had grown wild. The wind howled through the shutters, and the rain came sideways, slashing against the windows. The river outside was no longer calm. It was a roaring, living thing, deep, restless, and cruel. Under the floor, I could still hear him. Faint thumps. A muffled groan. He was awake. For a moment, I froze. The sound made my heart twist. He wasn't just a monster now. He was a man, weak, afraid, trapped in the dark. And for one terrible second, I almost felt pity. Almost. Then I saw the old scar on my wrist, the one from the night I tried to pull him off my mother, and the pity turned to stone. I knelt by the hatch. "Cole," I said quietly. "Do you remember what you told me when I was 16? No answer. Just the sound of his breathing. "You said pain makes people obedient. You said fear makes women good." I took a deep breath. "You were wrong." I turned the key in the lock. Not to open it, but to remove it. Then I carried the small oil lamp from the table and set it near the wall. The flame flickered, casting trembling shadows across the floor. "The river's high tonight," I whispered. "It always floods when the ground gets too full. And this house, Cole, it's been full for too long." I opened the back door. The wind pushed hard against me, rain soaking my dress. Outside, the river had swallowed the edge of the yard. Water lapped at the porch steps, rising fast. When the first crack came, the sound of wood giving way under the house, I didn't move. The water began to seep through the floorboards, cold against my bare feet. Down below, I heard him shout. He was screaming now. Begging. Promising things. But the river didn't care. And neither did I. I walked to the doorway, watching as the brown water climbed higher, carrying leaves, branches, pieces of the old fence. The cafe sign broke loose and drifted away. Inside the house, the lamp tipped over. The flame hissed as it met the rising flood. Darkness filled the room, soft and endless. By morning, the storm had passed. The sun rose pale over the river, and the water began to recede. The cafe stood half-collapsed, its wooden frame heavy with mud. Cole Mercer was never found. They said the river took him. I said nothing. A month later, I sold what was left of the cafe and left town. I took only 2 things with me, my mother's silver locket, and a single photo of the willow tree that now stood alone by the river. Some nights, when I dream, I can still hear the water, calm again, gentle. And I like to think my mother is there, finally resting, her laughter carried by the current. As for me, I'm not looking for peace. I already found it. It's been 3 years since I left the river behind. People say time heals everything. I don't think that's true. Time doesn't heal, it teaches. I live now in a small seaside town where no one knows my name. I run a little flower shop by the pier. Every morning, I open the shutters and let the sea breeze in. The air smells like salt and fresh lilies, not like damp wood and fear. Sometimes, customers ask about the small silver locket I wear. I just smile and tell them it's a family keepsake. I never open it for anyone. Inside, there's a photo of my mother and a tiny pressed petal from the willow tree. I used to wonder if what I did made me a monster too. If vengeance had turned me into the very thing I hated. But one night, standing by the shoreline, I realized something. The river didn't take Cole because I wanted revenge. It took him because nature has its own kind of justice. It washes away what doesn't belong. And it leaves behind what deserves to grow. Now, when it rains, I don't hide. I walk outside and let the water fall on my face. It feels cold, honest, and alive. It reminds me that even storms can cleanse. I still hear my mother's voice sometimes, soft as wind through the trees. You're free now, calmer, as she whispers. You can stop fighting. And I do. I close the shop early. I sit by the ocean, watching the horizon fade into gold. Maybe peace isn't something you find. Maybe it's something you build, quietly, with your own hands. After you've torn down everything that ever tried to break you. The sea, the wind, the sky, they all listen, and they all forgive. And for the first time in my life, so do I. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.